Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Rugby podcast, weekly roundup. I'm joined as ever this week by Liam O'Brien, and we're going to run the rule over the URC action last weekend. How are things, Liam? First and foremost, before we get into this.
Yeah. Good weekend. Good weekend all round. So the URC is hotting up big time now.
Massively. Playoffs are really intensifying. I think the organisers must be really thrilled with how things are kind of coming up here. But again, marquee headlines, and this is what we're going to probably focus on, ladies and gentlemen, next 50 minutes. Really reviewing the Leinster Rugby win over Munster 1934 at Thomond Park, securing the bonus point win. Connacht securing a very much a morale-boosting win over Benetton in Italy, 21-17. And Ulster Rugby had their moments against the Bulls first half, but then were, I think, blown away a bit in third quarter by a rampant Bulls and 19,000 crowd in South Africa, 34-16. I suppose without further ado, Liam, let's kind of look at Thomond Park. Myself and you, like we've supported Munster Rugby all our lives, passionate, loyal rugby supporters, but I've never felt so down and a little bit depressed in terms of a result than I had last Saturday night, immediately after the 34-19 loss. What were your initial thoughts, maybe, Liam? Maybe we go to team selection first, because for me, I felt it was an opportunity lost in terms of maybe some team selections there from Van Gran and management.
Yeah, I mean, it was inevitable because of the selection policy pre-match. It was almost inevitable. When you looked at it, honestly, anyone who was anything about rugby would have said, not a chance at home for Munster. And that has hardly ever happened to us since Munster had been on a professional keel in the game. So it was an opportunity lost, I guess, in terms of selection, in terms of, for me, like Hodnett would be like a nailed on guy anyway, pretty much at this stage. Also, opportunity lost at hooker. You could say certainly Casey as well at scrum half. I even was kind of saying to myself, okay, you're going to have Nash there, you're going to have Gallagher, you're going to have Daly and all these guys, and they're just going to be like, put out of position as well. So that was a worry beforehand anyway.
I definitely thought it was an opportunity lost. I thought, Chris Cloete, he announced during the week that he was leaving Bat Rugby, great servant. I'll miss the guy enormously, but I think backup strategy wise, I think insurance policy, have him on the bench or something, but I think it was an opportunity. And I saw with Leinster as well. I thought Leinster played this very well. I thought Dale Cullen and management played it absolutely on point. They did integrate some marquee players, but they also rewarded players that had impressed in recent weeks, particularly in that Six Nations kind of run of games. So you still saw the likes of Jimmy O'Brien, mentioned him last week. Again, he's been given ample opportunity and support in these full-blooded Irish provincial games to really express himself. Dunn at second row, I thought was absolutely outstanding. Ned Byrne, he had various guys like that, and he still had a monster bench to come on if need be. That insurance policy, and I thought maybe Munster missed a trick or two a little bit in terms of that. And yeah, but I suppose we go to the game here, Liam, and you can't fault Munster Rugby's effort here. From 1 to 23, they put their bodies on the line week in, week out. But the record with Johan Van Gran against Leinster, 2 wins out of 12. I don't think we can even consider this a rivalry anymore, can we, Liam? Just in terms of, a rivalry is supposed to be a 50-50 toss-up contest. It just hasn't felt like this in many a year. And in fairness to Leinster, got some easy points from penalties that were conceded by Munster. And again, if you're going to set up field position, no better team from Leinster than to finally secure tries eventually.
Yeah, you're actually right there. It's not like a rivalry. Quite frankly, now I would even go so far as to say it's like 11 times out of 10 Leinster are going to beat Munster. That's how inevitable it's gotten at this stage. We've never like had a chance in the games. Like we've lost 12, 15-point defeats in those games, so we've never even been at the races. And in this game, we're talking about the first half. As good as Munster played some rugby in that first half, again, Leinster just kept the scoreboard ticking over with those needless penalties conceded. And then, Leinster were going to have a purple patch probably in the second half as well. And so Munster, I suppose, needed to have a good bit of a lead built up by half time, which it didn't have, unfortunately. They were just about in there at half time, and then they conceded a penalty as well.
Yeah. Thought it was a complete ball break from Munster. Now, breakdown work, officiating, I think it was a bit non-existent. And we probably go to Gavin Coombs' incident in a while, but it's a very good article from Duncan Casey in the URC Examiner on Monday, and makes for very sorry reading for Munster's sake. Second highest penalty count in the league, Liam O'Brien. Only Zebri is behind us. We have 138 penalties conceded. And I mean, if you're an officiator, if you're a guy from the Gallagher Premiership and you're looking at stats, I think this is a key stat that you're coming into this game probably having a bit of a conception about Munster. And I mean, what's he paying the first 4 penalties that Ross Byrne has basically slotted over? An offside, Rook basically killed the ball, another offside, and then I thought the ball break was 12-11 up. Carberry had slotted over a few nice scores. A late hit from Finian Wycherley gives Byrne the opportunity then to basically put Leinster in front. I thought it was a psychological blow there. If they could go in at half-time, Munster maybe could readjust, but Leinster in at half-time, and then they literally... I thought they toyed with Munster a bit in their attacking play. I mean, pack exchanges basically executed their phase play very well, but I thought this was a team selection from Leinster that were looking to create attacking with, whereas Munster were a team selection that they were afraid to lose this match. And so it proved with Lowe and Jimmy O'Brien being very prominent in that second half.
Yeah, and like, let's be honest, they did pick up the pace there from the, like, whatever, 45th, 46th minute for that 15 minutes afterwards, and the game was over. Lowe, yeah, got in the left there. And then Jimmy O'Brien, I must say, he had a lot to do just to finish his own try. He stood up and it was a good finish by him as well. I suppose after good work by Ringrose as well, who had a smashing game as well, I suppose, really, you could say. He stepped in well, actually, O'Brien did. And then Del Ende try, and then Lowe finished it inevitably as well. So that was it again.
Yeah, I mean, the tries itself, felt sorry a bit for Nash, felt a little bit sorry for Daly, felt a little bit sorry for Gallagher, because they had massive defensive reads to concentrate and to answer during that 80 minutes. Kind of was pretty incessant in that second and third quarter, and literally the support work of Leinster, I thought it was outstanding. The ball carriers having multiple options to offload if need be, and I thought that try for Jimmy O'Brien, there was some great hands there from Leinster. I mean, you could see with Munster, I mean, Carberry, he's hitting the line, but nothing is very convincing in terms of the line speed, trying to create a line break. God, Delende didn't get any good fast go forward ball at all. Same with Farrell. I mean, these are key games here again where we're just unable to figure out how to get our big ball carriers involved in the games. But I thought the Jimmy O'Brien try was absolutely exquisite, as you say. I think a few people have been critical of Conor Murray, but that was a magnificent step off Jimmy O'Brien. He still had plenty to do when he bypassed Murray, and Murray's no slouch, like, in terms of his defensive reads consistently with the British and Irish Lions, Munster, Ireland. He always bails your side up, but I mean, I thought the step was just absolutely phenomenal. And again, another guy, another back. I remember Jordan Larmour in these games literally creating a household name for himself. I think Jimmy O'Brien has probably done that a little bit last Saturday as well. But yeah, I mean, Liam, looking at it and the aftermath of this game, I mean, Van Gran's comments were, look, we did as much as we could, had to applaud Leinster. But I mean, the injuries that have come out of this, Liam, have been quite significant, particularly in our pack. What's your kind of viewpoint, kind of viewing into extra Chiefs at Sandy Park next Saturday?
Oh, it's a bit devastating, really. With Coombs out and Killer and Byrne, that's our 3 main ball carriers in the pack gone. So like that's an awful lot of attacking physical power that's just eliminated immediately. And you don't want that when you're going to somewhere like Exeter Chiefs and Sandy Park, of all places. Yeah, it means that some of the guys are going to get picked again. This is what I think is going to happen now. They're probably going to end up picking Cloete again, and having threadbare options then in the second row as well. So you still hope for that we're going to change our selection policy for next week as well.
You'd kind of hope so, Liam, to a certain extent. I think Combs, particularly, he did have a strong second quarter before he had to retire hurt. I mean, side entry all day long. I don't know how the referee misses that in the breakdown. But again, it was indicative of the way this game was being officiated, I'm afraid. And Leinster were kind of adjusting very well. And I think that was maybe a sore point for me from Munster Rugby, that we were just frankly not able to adjust to the officiating style here. Gallagher Premiership officiating versus URC or versus European, it's very different in terms of the intensity, particularly around the breakdown battle. He let an awful lot of things go. Leinster, kudos to them. But as you say, Liam, I think team selection is going to be an interesting one. It should be an interesting one. I think several players here really haven't done themselves any justice after last Saturday night, to be perfectly fair. And I think there needs to be changes here. But then, how drastic can you go, particularly in the pack? I mean, Exeter Chiefs, very pack-orientated side. You can't really throw the kitchen sink really out here. I mean, we're now kind of on bare bones here. I mean, Jenkins is going to have to start again, hasn't he? Quite clearly. He got 55 minutes into him last weekend. I mean, it was fine. It wasn't too, outstanding or bad, but I mean, he's going to have to build up his fitness. I mean, he's going to have one powerful game on next Saturday against the Exeter Chiefs. Otherwise, I think we want to stay in this tie going back to Thomond Park. I mean, this front five, I think, really is going to be put under the microscope a bit on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I mean, Jenkins should start. He should get his 55, 60 minutes. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But we're going to have to think a bit tactically as well in terms of what front row that we actually have starting and what we bring on. We're probably going to have to bring on a more powerful front row, than we've had up to now. So, I'd be kind of looking at, do you bring on Scannell and leave him on the bench? Do you again try and go with Archer and have Ryan on the bench and have those two kind of as impact guys on the 60-minute mark? That's what I'd be thinking anyway.
Yeah, and Loosehead as well kind of is worrying me a little bit as well. But I mean, you've Lockman, you've Wycherley there as well. I mean, horses for courses here now. I mean, who do you go for? Probably pointing to Lockman a little bit, given his experience, but Wycherley hasn't done a whole foot wrong, and I think that was another disappointment aspect for me from the team selection, was that certain young guys actually put up the hand up in the South African trip under very extreme circumstances in the Bulls and also against the Lions, did relatively well, and then to be told then during the week that they weren't involved, that was maybe a little bit of a slap in the face of a few of them. But I think the hooker situation as well might be one where, do you go Barron? Do you go Scott Buckley? Scannell really hasn't been pulling trees out for me this season. Again, this is the business of crunch end of the season. I mean, hard calls have to be made, but I just didn't feel with that team selection last week, certain people got into the team, and to be honest, it was showing up. It was showing up with the form and the performance that was produced. I think an awful lot of guys were a little bit, under par, and against a side like Leinster, you just can't be doing that. So I suppose as well, 10 position here, Liam. I mean, Carberry, great off the tee. Attacking wise, what were your feelings in terms of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, you can always say with the halfbacks, it's a kind of ball they're presented with, and the forward they're presented with. But for me, Healy probably now, I would say we need a bit more attacking in the outside half channel, and I think he just simply has it. And I think at this stage, in terms of if we're picking on form, you would have to have Healy over Carberry.
Mm. I mean, Crowley comes into that debate as well here, Liam. It could be one that's prime and ready for Jack Crowley to kind of come in and impress. His game management, his good kicking game, out of hand. I thought Carberry looked a little bit more comfortable when he went back to full back. Gallagher was taken off, and then Carberry came in at 15 and started to do kind of nice things. So, I mean, if Haley doesn't make it, there's another decision poser. In fairness to Gallagher, he had a torrid time, but I think it was players around him. I mean, there's so many questions here. I mean, it's not where Leinster come in against Connacht and they're now wondering who to drop, because all the guys are top of the ground. I mean, from a Munster Rugby perspective, quite a few marquee players really had off nights, and now you're kind of asking the question a bit. Against Exeter Chiefs Sandy Park, which is going to be a tough place to go, do you really plumb for these guys? hoping for a performance more so than a performance actually being delivered at the weekend. So I think I don't envy Van Gran, Larkham, and also Roundtree to a certain extent. I think the team selection is going to be quite difficult because I think, the video analysis is probably made for very, very sore viewing, particularly on Monday. So, but yeah, and I mean, the overall perspective here from Munster Rugby, I know, apologies, ladies and gentlemen, we've kind of been rolling here in terms of Munster Rugby, but organisationally wise, we still have no indication of who the head coach actually will be. And there's no real indication so late in the season attacking coach, backroom staff wise. I thought that would be clarified by now. It just seems as if we're kind of sleepwalking a little bit into the end of the season. Not really secured many acquisitions, but some players who we're going to talk about later in the podcast leaving to go pastures new. But I mean, Liam, it's all very worrying here. I mean, just from top to bottom, it just doesn't have a feel-good factor at the moment here.
No, I mean, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have had our coaching ticket announced weeks ago. What we're hearing now is that that it was Milton Haig as director of rugby and Noel McNamara as backs coach, and now the rumor is that Contepomi is going to leave Leinster and Noel McNamara will go there. But I mean, what is the delay? I've absolutely no idea what the delay is. And that creates more unease as well among the squad. And then we have, of course, a situation where, again, I know Cloete was a great servant to Munster Rugby, but, another basically poaching that was done of a signing for undermining, I suppose, the Munster team and the Munster squad by Van Gran signing him as well, while still Munster coach. And then, we still don't really know, as you pointed out, in a lot of positions, who's our number one player. We don't really not very tactically astute as well. It's just our home game seems to be actually dissolving really this time.
Yeah, I do agree on certain points there. I think the Van Gran era is reaching its conclusion, but even starting back to that absolute shithouse, apologies for the language, but in terms of how that was announced when he was confirmed as Bath Rugby head coach, I think from then on it is kind of unravelled gradually. I think we're going to see a kind of quite quick unravel here if things aren't really shored up very quickly. I mean, heaven forbid here, Liam, a heavy loss against Exeter at Sandy Park. European season's done, and then you're probably looking, hopefully, to get a result in their last 3 games to really secure a top 8 spot. I mean, that's not where Munster Rugby or Munster Rugby fans want to be, but it is a reality right now. I think it's just the instability that has caused reputable damage in terms of recruitment, infrastructural plans, all that sort of stuff has really been thrown in the air due to this Van Gran departure and this delay in this head coaching ticket and backroom. Players sitting on the fence a little bit in terms of deciding which rugby clubs they were going to sign. Obviously, Munster was probably one of them, but you can't really commit if you're a player, an agent, or a representative of that player, simply because you just don't know who the head coach is or who the attacking coach is. Will they have the same ethos and vision that you have, or defensively, or pack forward coach? I think I think Ian Flanagan and the board really need to kind of urgently address a few off-field stuff quite urgently, because it really unsettled the Munster fans that I've spoken to after the game. Really, it's a little bit unnerving. It was very unnerving there the last 20 minutes, particularly against Leinster, because you could see Leinster brought on the big guns. But I mean, the game was well and truly over at that stage thing. It wasn't as if we hadn't seen this before, hadn't seen the script. It was just the Conservative game plan. Again, the attacking conviction wasn't there in terms of quick ruck ball, not really identifying our key runners, getting the gain line breaks. And I think Combs, to a certain extent, was probably a guy that was probably a loss. But I think overall, is one player going to really kind of contribute to an overall result? Probably not. So I think from that perspective, not good. And then, the squad departures, do we have reinforcements to come in? That is questionable. So I think congratulations to Leinster. I think they're on an upward trajectory again. I think their squad depth is phenomenal. But again, it's showing how they're blooding in these new guys in key marquee fixtures. Let's not, emphasize the fact they were able to give the confidence to the young guys to know that they were capable of producing a performance, whereas Van Gran and the management didn't have any trust in their underage academy, and guys that have bailed Munster out in certain parts of the season, which I feel is very disappointing. And I think an awful lot of questions, and I think unfortunately some home truths are coming up a little bit earlier for Munster than maybe anticipated. But maybe we can move on here, Liam, just in terms of Connacht and Ulster quite briefly. I mean, we asked last week for Connacht to give a response ahead of that two-legged last 16 affair with Leinster Rugby starting this Friday night in the sports ground. And to be fair, Connacht, they were 17-14 down 11 minutes to go, but all credit to Connacht, pulled it out of the bag. After a good start, good opening half, they pulled it out of the bag and got a very much required win.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had a good open 20 minutes, didn't they? I mean, like, it's 2 good tries. First try, Keane Prendergast, he could have passed outside to O'Halloran, but he kept going himself. Then we had Niall Murray crashing over. And yeah, I mean, at that stage, like, you know, you're halfway through a bonus point, and to be honest, in Italy, that's what you should be going for. Like, you know, you probably get your bonus point. But yeah, they came back powerfully in the second half, Benetton, and 17-14, you know, going to the last 5 minutes. So you have to say huge credit to Connacht. It was a game that in recently they probably could have lost just on confidence alone, you know. But they got over the line. They got the 3 tries scored, the win by 7, and it's keeping their season going basically.
Absolutely, it keeps it ticking along. I mean, Paul Boyle press conference this week. Leinster really, they're kind of honing in on the Leinster games. They're kind of marquee fixtures now, but they needed a win. I mean, they leaked 101 points. Timely reminder, because they had leaked 101 points in URC action in the last 2 fixtures, one away to Edinburgh and then the home loss to Leinster. Now you can say that's distorted by Tom Daly's early sending off, but I mean, there were kind of maybe a few kind of gremlins there when Padavani went over on 46 minutes, and then Hala Fifi, literally great match from him, 62 metres, 2 turnovers. You know, when he goes over, you're thinking, oh, here we go again. Connacht's rugby's record in Benetton isn't great, but in fairness to Connacht and the pack, thought Murray was absolutely outstanding as well in the second row in his cameo. But I mean, they built the phases, got the composure, and, you know, scored a decisive try. I mean, Mac Hansen as well, I thought, led by example. Finlay Beelum as well. So those internationals coming back in were huge. They provided much leadership. I think Hansen's defensive work was absolutely outstanding. But I suppose the key stat here for me, and I suppose Andy Friend has probably been kind of looking at this, the missed tackle count. 21 missed tackles from both Benetton and Connacht during the 80 minutes. That simply is not going to wash against Leinster, particularly this Friday night in the sports ground. So, and the penalty count was 18-10 as well, 18 penalties for Connacht as well. So, and that kind of coincided with Benetton coming back into it, particularly in that third quarter, Liam. So, I mean, it was a much morale boosting win. We've kind of asked for a response, and they certainly got it. I mean, I think it's an outside chance of top 8 here, Liam, fair to agree, but at least they have a win under their belt. There's a bit of confidence going in against Leinster. And I think, for me personally here, Liam, I think it's a free hit for Connacht. All the pressure's on Leinster Rugby, given the fixtures, how things have gone in recent weeks. I think for Connacht, just to express themselves and see how things go. I mean, 2-legged affair, and see how the cookie crumbles, really.
Yeah, I give them a chance, actually, funny enough, when you have the likes of Beelum and Aki coming back in. Yeah, a full-strength Connacht side can give it a right whelp off them. I suppose, and the thing is too, like, realistically, look at their fixtures, they are out really of the URC. I would say at this stage, I would say probably like 9th, 10th. So, like, you know, for some teams, you could almost tactically be saying, you know, how do we manage a 2-legged affair? But they should just go all out and get the victory and keep it alive for a second leg.
Absolutely. I think, you know, and I hope Andy Friend, I think the Connacht team, they're really embracing this week. I think Paul Boyle's comments, particularly what I heard from Morning Ireland, was very pleasing. That they're really kind of focused in on their own performance. They know what to expect from Leinster Rugby, but they're not going to let them deter that in terms of their performance. I think there's motivation aplenty after what happened in the previous round with Tom Daly sending off. And again, there were some good parts to that game for Connacht Rugby, but it's that consistent 80 minutes that will be the key. And the 2-legged affair, as we kind of spoke about, and we'll talk about the previews in due course here, Liam. they're going to take a life of its own here. I mean, it would be lovely for Connacht to get the win in the sports ground and put a little bit of pressure on Leinster particularly. But really, it's performance first, result second, I would think, here from Connacht. And I think, let's hope for... the two teams play an absolute superb brand of rugby. It'd be great to see a bit of fireworks in the sports ground, plenty of tries, that sort of thing, and have this second leg in the RDS really kind of come to the crescendo. So well done to Connacht Rugby. And then Ulster concluded their South African trip. Now, after the kind of the lows of the previous weekend with the controversial try that was not given, the URC head official having to basically apologise to Ulster for that last minute gaffe, they did go to the Loftus Versfeld. Liam, we feared that this result probably would have happened. But in fairness to Ulster for the first half, there were some promising moments there, but ultimately Bulls did take over in the second half and were deserving winners.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, look, they got their first big crowd of the season as well. The momentum is absolutely with them now. Madosh Tambwe crashed over. Right, see, he's a serious quality player. They need to get him a passport quickly, and Curtly Arense as well. And in the pack, like, just their mauling game is just outstanding. Grobelaar is so powerful. Cloete has had a brilliant season all round, just very hard to stop.
I think it's just indicative of the South African teams at the moment, aren't they? They're really coming in top of the ground now, heading into the playoffs. You can see that momentum was being built, particularly when the Bulls played Munster. I thought that was a key win for the Bulls. You could see it wasn't perfect. They would be the first to admit that they were very startled by Munster Rugby's reaction in the second half to really kind of press and get a loser bonus point when they were such in the ascendancy. But I think with Ulster, I mean, Nathan Doak, there were some fantastic penalty kicks to get a 9-3 lead at half time. It was being very evenly contested here, Liam, but as you say, that pack for the Bulls is absolutely a ferocious unit when it gets going. It's again, really, stamping his authority on the game with that early try in the second half. Tambwe, my God, phenomenal. I mean, an absolute physicality of a player to kind of crash over. I don't know if it was that Mike Lowry that tried to tackle him, but I mean,
it was Mike Lowry. Yeah,
my God, it was just literally men against boys there a little bit, and then Grobelaar with the maul. Now, with the Grobelaar maul, we have to kind of get to the Kieran Treadwell incident and Cloete as well. So there was two sin bins here, and I mean, I don't know what your viewpoint was here, Liam, particularly on the Treadwell one, because I mean, it was 2016 here. Marshall gets a nice try for Ulster to get them back into it. I mean, it was about maybe 20-25 minutes left. What was your reading of that Treadwell sin bin? Didn't look much in terms of real time.
It was a bit harsh, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like if you're given a card, you wouldn't give it for that. That's for sure.
Like it did seem, in real time, it seemed very innocuous. I mean, yeah, maybe he's a little bit high, but I didn't think there was much impact to the player. And I think the best reaction or the best gauge is the Bulls players really didn't react. They went to the breakdown, broke ball, created a new phase of play. And it was only just the referee then blowing it up after 2 or 3 phases. I thought it was one of those 50-50. I mean, letter of the law. But again, where's the mitigation and all that sort of stuff now? If you heard us last week, we were talking about mitigation for all the wrong reasons. But and then I thought the one of note was probably Cutse's one. 10-15 minutes later, I mean, he gets the tackle all wrong. It's high. I mean, I think the referee has kind of made the decision himself after the Treadwell one, and he's given a yellow card. But I thought that was a little bit more serious than Treadwell's, to be perfectly fair.
Yeah. You could certainly argue red for that, couldn't you? I mean, like there was no mitigating factors as we call them for that particular incident, and that again another crucial card decision against an Irish team in South Africa, and this is definitely becoming a bit of an issue now, considering that this is the fine margins now between the Irish teams actually going to top of the table and the South Africans following up behind them.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Liam, on this occasion anyway, I think the Treadwell one was probably a key decisive moment, because immediately after Morney Stain basically puts the ball in within 5 metres, and then Grobelaar and his Bulls colleagues, pack and three quarters all barrel over, and it kind of opens the game up a bit. Now, in fairness to Ulster, refused to give in essentially, and I think it was kind of Nathan Doak looking to create a little bit of depth, and he was intercepted by Orenze, who literally he strolled in, but the pace of the guy is just phenomenal. I mean, more impressive stats: 119 meters, one try, obviously with the intercept, but they have massive threats to Bulls. You can see it in terms of the Stormers as well, the Lions, the Sharks as well. It's a good news story for the league, I would think, the fledgling league, that we're seeing the South African teams are now coming on the rail here. And I think particularly for the likes of Munster, it could be a nervy few weeks in the last regular season, because I think with rankings, top 8 qualify for the playoff series and top 8 for the European Champions Cup. But again, it looks as if the South African teams here will probably finish up pretty high, at least 3 of them. So I think from a playoffs perspective here, Liam, it's going to be a fascinating watch here for the last 3 rounds of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it really actually looks as if the Stormers will be second seeds on the log, you know, and then with the talk of the actual URC final being in South Africa, you could easily see South Africans actually sneak it, like by, say, someone like the Stormers or the Bulls actually beating Leinster at home to win the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you know, it's been good in terms of conference, you know, that you'll guarantee one conference team per se in the playoffs. But I mean, beside the point here, Liam, I think, as you say, home field advantage for South Africa, particularly at the end of the season. I suppose Leinster Rugby here will have European Cup ambitions as well. So let's say, argument's sake, that they do beat Connacht in the 2-legged affair. Then it gets into the quarterfinals. They're scheduled to go down to South Africa as well during that period. How does Leo Cullen and management actually deal with that? I mean, it is a fair assessment here, and it could lead up to some fascinating quarterfinals and semi-final fixtures. Yeah, not off the runs a possibility here that we could see a South African finalist at least. And as you say, could be an outside shot for 2 if literally how fixtures go, injuries, suspensions, that sort of thing, European commitments for Leinster Rugby particularly, or Ulster. But yeah, it's evenly poised. But I mean, I think it's great for the brand of URC down there, 19,000 in the Loftus Fairfield. It was a great crowd, great atmosphere, and it should only increase with the way the South African teams have surged back up the table in previous rounds. So congratulations to the Bulls. I know the Lions was a full sweep again for the South African teams this round, but I mean, it's good for the league. I mean, it shows the competitiveness of it now. There's not going to be any easy games going into the last 3 rounds, which for a tournament organiser you could only dream of at the start of the season, given the COVID and the pandemic. So, Liam, with that, I suppose before we go to the European Champions Cup, I mean, we can probably talk about some player contract renewals and some retirements as well. Maybe we start straight off the bat with Leinster Rugby today. When we've recorded Dan Leavy announcing his retirement from professional rugby. I mean, Dan Leavy, what an outstanding player. I mean, I feel so sorry for the guy in terms of having to retire so early. What were your thoughts when you heard of that retirement announcement today?
Oh, so sad for him, like, because in 17 and certainly in 2018, he reached levels of play for an outside flanker that I don't think any Irish player has reached, to be honest about it. That's how good he was, you know. He was certainly one of those rare kind of mongrel type back row forwards that we had. I sometimes think, you know, him not being at the World Cup in 19 was as much of a difference as us not getting any further, you know. I think that was how good he was. And I kind of compared him in a way to Richie McCaw. He had that sort of presence, that physical presence about him as well. That like refusal to yield, almost like, you know. 27 years old, wow, what an impact he's had. But I was always hoping when he came back from injury that he would regain his previous levels. But let's be honest about it, he was like probably third choice for Leinster this season. And sad to see that's the end of his career.
Yeah, for a 27-year-old in the prime of his life and his fitness, sporting career, to have to call it quits, it just kind of says something about the injury that he sustained. I mean, but I think we go back to 2018. I think, as you say, height of his powers. I think Peter O'Mahony has spoke very eloquently today about Dan Leavy, just in terms of his impact, even around that 2018 squad. Being such a young guy then, but was one of the leaders there, wasn't he? He just literally, as you say, the physicality, complete all-rounder, superb ball carrier, some of the running lines, his intelligence with the ball, his defensive reads, top-notch. It really just goes to show the Leinster conveyor belt. If that was Connacht, Munster, Ulster losing a player like that, we'd be devastated. We'd be kind of looking for, where's our next guy? He's probably coming in 4 or 5 years. But the fact of the matter is, look who's arrived. And we didn't say it, but like the back row for Leinster on Saturday night was nothing short of sensational. You've Conan there, obviously, at 8. You've Caelan Doris, Josh van der Fleer, Scott Penny. Josh Murphy has to go to the Connacht next season to get game time. That conveyor belt, they're just literally churning these guys out with such quality. But I mean, Dan Leavy was probably, the blueprint for an awful lot of these guys coming up, and it's just terribly sad, really. And I hope Dan Leavy doesn't leave rugby, that he gets involved. And I know Leinster Rugby will support him in whatever he needs to do. But to get a guy of that magnitude in terms of that skill set and back row operator, I think there'd be plenty of clubs looking for him in terms of his skill set, his nous, his experience. Might be an avenue there for him, but looking marvellous player, and it's heartbreaking to kind of hear that today. We wish Dan all the best here, Liam, just in terms of his next future career plans. But yeah, an awful shock today to hear that. And look, Leinster Rugby, being Leinster Rugby, they'll support him whatever he needs to do properly. And yeah, sad to hear. And from a Munster Rugby perspective, I suppose it'll be 2 kind of marquee departures. We talked about this whole instability about the head coach and the backroom staff. Now, this kind of manifests itself with loyal servants that are now leaving to go elsewhere. And I mean, we mentioned about Chris Cloete. Outstanding servant. Mentioned on Twitter in terms of the 5 magnificent years of service, coming in from when he did on a short-term contract to becoming a very firm home favourite. And now, obviously, we have Cork native John Ryan as well. We'd heard rumours regarding the tight head props contract situation probably at the start of the year. We just didn't know where he was going to end up next season. But again, Chris Cloete going to Bath Rugby, John Ryan going to Wasps. So, 2 Gallagher Premiership clubs. And I think, to be fair, Liam, that these 2 Premiership clubs are getting probably 2 astute signings. Would you not agree?
Yeah, they certainly are. Absolutely. Proven performers in at European level. I have to say, I'm extremely worried about the departure of John Ryan. Literally, we're threadbare at tight head prop right now. We were mentioning before this about Roman Salanoa. Like, if he ever actually got going outside of injury, he'd be a massive plus. But he's essentially, you could say, he's not there. Then we have Archer, and then we have the South African Knox, who, again, to my mind, I just don't think he's really stepped up to the plate, at that level. So essentially, we have just one tight head prop next season. Again, you'd have been hoping that if Milton Haig is going to be in some way on the coaching ticket, the director of rugby or whatever else he's going to be, assistant coach, that he could get some gnarly Georgian tight head prop. Surely to God he could do something like that. But John Ryan, in terms of next season, again, we're talking about the World Cup. He, if we kind of say come World Cup time, come pre-World Cup selection, he'd be another viable option for backup for Tadhg Furlong, because I think Marty Moore at the moment is second in line, very much so, after what he did for Ulster against Leinster 2 weeks ago. But certainly Ryan as well, and I don't care if he is playing abroad, You've got John Ryan, you've got Ollie Jager as well at the Crusaders. They have to be options as well.
Let's be brutally honest, like, Stephen Archer is 34 now. He'll be 35 in January 29th. Longevity-wise, Stephen Archer has really shown it, but you can't be really dependent on Stephen Archer all season. And yeah, it is kind of worrying for me, and for you as well, Liam, just in terms of that that tight head prop situation. John Ryan, obviously looking at kind of the last kind of move, really, and I think this is going to invigorate him in terms of Wasps. I think Wasps is a superb rugby club, well run, and he will relish that. He mentioned in the press release in terms of his excitement to go over there, make an impact and contribute and look for silverware. I think silverware was the key word there, to really look to kind of strike on a bit. So I think from that perspective, from John Ryan, I'll miss him. An outstanding performer for Munster. Never let the side down, particularly with Ireland as well, that 2018 Grand Slam as well. He was kind of a prominent part and a superb scrummager. Money can't buy scrummaging machines like John Ryan. So, I mean, I'll be sad to see him going. And Chris Cloete, I think, just an outstanding servant for Munster. I know you mentioned Liam, but I mean, for Chris Cloete now, that's the last payday from a player's perspective. He needs to embrace that and to go to bat for rugby. And I would say, with Johan van Graan there, with backroom staff that is going to bat rugby, I wouldn't be all surprised on the cards if Chris was to join that coaching ticket, either towards the latter end of next season or the following season. I think as a back row operator, he had plenty to impart there for sure. So I think from that perspective, there could be a coaching kind of angle to that as well. But I mean, as we said here, it's time for the homegrown guys like O'Sullivan, Hodnett, Dillon, guys like that to really step up now in terms of that second role. So Chris did fill the gap magnificently well, but I think, that's it. I think everyone has their time, and I think Chris will move on. Well, I think all the best wishes of everyone in Munster Rugby, to be perfectly fair and say John Ryan. But as you say, it is creating an awful lot of vacuum, an awful lot of radio silence within Munster Rugby in terms of their organisational hierarchy. It just doesn't bode well. And, I'm worried as well, along with you, Liam, in terms of Archer. If Archer were to go down next season, where's our go-to? Particularly on that tight head position. I mean, it kind of looks to me as if Archer is the incumbent, and he's going to.
Is there a Mark Donnelly? Is he one of the guys that we had on the Wasps trip? Mark Donnelly, I think. Possibly.
Yeah, I believe so, Liam. But to be fair, it's kind of trusting guys in here. From that perspective. But again, these guys have to be given pre-season. To be fair. Also, like Declan Moore, I suppose, was kind of offloaded as well, wasn't he? So, I mean, from that perspective, decisions have to be made in terms of squad now. I'm sincerely hoping Munster Rugby are scouring here in terms of the provincials, the club game, to see if there is tight head prop talent around, to see if we can literally unearth some gems here. Because obviously the professional club transfer window is pretty much done. People know where they're signing and playing for next season, so that's not an option. So now we're going to have to be creative in terms of the infrastructural grassroots to identify these new up-and-coming players. Obviously, the Green Court kind of academy comes into, but again, it is very, very precarious at the moment, I think, for Munster on a few fronts, particularly on that front row and also front five as a whole, because we're kind of seeing that gradual, I hate to say it, degradation, particularly in the big games, where we were once famed for our kind of pack front five. It is now kind of falling further and further behind, and that's my fear in terms of expertise at Sandy Park as well, that we will get exposed just given our ball carriers and our physicality being missing there. But again, we'll wish John and Chris all the best. Liam, before we leave you here, maybe we can have a little review of the European Champions Cup. It's back with a bang. Just to get maybe a few kind of predictions for this weekend, maybe kind of one-liner, two-liner.
Yeah, sure.
So we are kicking off Friday night, 8 p.m. Connacht Leinster Sports Ground, Galway. Who do you have here?
Yeah, again, it depends on what kind of selection that Leinster go for. They have a bit more leeway, obviously, But as we've seen, like Jimmy O'Brien will be there, probably Tommy O'Brien, I still think Connacht have a big performance in them. This has to be maybe their performance of the season. I think, you cannot discount how big an influence Bundy Aki is on this side as well, in terms of his leadership and his organisation there. I would be kind of deciding with Leinster, just get over the line, like maybe plus 5 points. I think it won't be enough for Connacht in this game.
Yeah, I'll probably go with you, but I think Connacht will provide an absolute sterling performance, a really stirring performance there to really, get the home fans going. It's, hopefully the weather is dry track, because I think both sides demand it in terms of how they create attacking width. And I think the likes of Thornbury coming back in here Liam might be kind of a key one as well, along with Bundy. As you say, Bundy will be kind of a key cog there, particularly in the three quarters. But as long as Connacht can kind of settle into the game, first 20, 30 minutes, not really do anything too unforced error-wise, I think all we're asking for Connacht here is to stay in touch into the second leg. You know, tie is not over, but we need to kind of keep in with that 7 points. I mean, just think of it as a pool game. Try to get a loser bonus point within 7 points. The tie is still alive. So for me, Leinster probably, I was very impressed by them, particularly in the second half when they really turned the screw on Munster. Munster had absolutely no response from a pack perspective. So I think Leinster for me, but I think about 7 to 10 points, maybe being the final outcome. But I think Connacht will have their moments on Saturday. And this is becoming a bit of a grudge derby. La Rochelle go to Bordeaux Begley's, and I think you've probably seen the video, have you, Liam, of the Bordeaux Begley's coach and Rog having it out there last weekend?
Yeah, he's not
familiarity breeding content. Who do you fancy here?
God almighty, yeah. All their contests this season have been quite brutal, actually, really, you know. And again, you're trying to figure out, is the second leg going to be an advantage as well? I think La Rochelle, actually, to get like something like plus 15 points, which should be a good kickstart for them going into the second leg. So I would give them a good head start in this game.
Well, I'm just looking at context of last weekend and that league game. If there isn't massive motivation at Bordeaux Begley's dressing room to put one over on Ronan O'Gara, nothing will. I think Bordeaux here will probably win this. It's going to be, I think, the classic French affair where the home side really will come out all guns blazing. I still think La Rochelle will be still in it, but I think maybe 5-7 point win for Bordeaux Begley's, because they've shown enough for me, particularly in these pool stages, when they're given good ball, good quick ruck ball, they can cause an awful lot of issues. So I think Bordeaux Begley's, but I think La Rochelle overall 2 legs will probably have enough. But I think intriguingly poised, I would think, if Bordeaux Begley's do win narrowly there, because I think the 2 head coaches now, you know, they won't be on the Christmas card list of each other's families, really, I think, after last weekend. But yeah, I think Bordeaux Begley's by 5 points. Then we probably go to Manchester, Sale Sharks, to be precise, against the Bristol Bears. Who do you have on that one, Liam?
Yeah, well, this is going to be, again, a really open game, I have to say, you know. If you're looking for good free-flowing rugby, this is probably the game to be watching, actually. Sale will have all their big South Africans back and can be absolutely spectacular at times, like length of the pitch sort of efforts, you know. I would, plump for Sale. I'll go like 7 points in this game.
Yeah, I'll go with you on that purely because I saw Bristol Bears against Northampton Saints last weekend in Franklin Gardens. After about 10 minutes, I thought, Jesus, Bristol Bears have this well in hand. Switched over 20 minutes later and they were 10 points down. And it's that unpredictability with the Bristol Bears, really, isn't it, Liam? That's kind of leaning towards Sale, particularly in Manchester. I think Sale should win, but I think it'll probably be within 5 to 7 points again. Probably a cagey enough affair to start off with, but then we'll open up. I do fancy probably Bristol Bears to win it over the 2 legs, but I think Bristol Bears have that ability to literally cut teams open, but they do have the Achilles heel of their own defensive frailties as well. So, yeah, I think Sale for me for 5-7 points. Then we get to the first, we get to the third Irish contingent here, which would be Ulster Rugby. Again, they've had a tough South African tour. They've only kind of landed back in Belfast, I think, on Monday, and they have a quick turnaround to face reigning champions Toulouse. So, Liam, do you fancy Ulster here to do anything in the first leg?
Oh, firstly, what a reward for being like the top seed in the competition at the group stages. But yeah, I would say, just even coming back from the South Africa trip and that context as well, I think it's absolutely Toulouse all the way in this game, really. Ulster is more a case of keeping it tight until the second leg, but yeah, I'd probably go, I don't know, something like plus 10 points for Toulouse.
It was an absolute ball break of a draw that Ulster got. We mentioned last week how this actually permutation came about last week. You couldn't script it, Liam. In terms of Toulouse, I fancy Toulouse as being a top 4. So I thought maybe for Ulster, they'd get someone a little bit lower in terms of the squad depth quality. But to get Toulouse, after Toulouse's game being called up by the Cardiff Blues, Cast were within 3 minutes of knocking Toulouse out on the Friday night, really, if we think about it. So I think Toulouse have an awful lot of a statement of intent here to literally go at tournament organisers, and unfortunately Ulster could be that. And I think, to be fair here, the turnaround, the jet lag, all the stuff in South Africa may come back to really take its toll on Ulster here. I know it's all well and good to have a full touring party out there, get the team bonding, get some team performances, granted no wins, but I think this is a different animal here, Liam. Toulouse, I think, plus 15. And I think, unfortunately for Ulster, I think the second leg could be academic. I really do think so. And I think it's just pure rotten luck here on Ulster's part. We'd fancied them, at the start of this podcast series, that this side would literally make. But I think this is a massively arduous fixture for them. And I think with the South African trip, I think you have to if you underestimate the whole travel aspect, the logistics of this, you're not really taking things into account. I think if Ulster get within 7 to 10 here, I think they'll be doing quite well. But I think with Antamac Dupont, Six Nations, Grand Slam win, all that sort of stuff, my God, momentum's there for Toulouse, and I think they will provide maybe one of the marquee performances this weekend. And then we probably get to Exeter, Munster here, Liam. What are your thoughts? We've been kind of a little bit down in terms of Munster, but do we see the backs against the wall scenario happening here for Munster and getting a result?
You can't blame against us, or certainly we've delivered so many times in the past, but it's just, for me, I have this niggly feeling that things could go quite spectacularly wrong, and it could be all over by the second leg. So again, it does depend on how we approach the game tactically and our selection beforehand as well. I would be going at this stage for Exeter. I would be going for plus 12 points.
Well, that would be pretty, I wouldn't say insurmountable, but I think that would be definitely a big mountain to climb for Munster. I'm kind of with you in a certain respect. Exeter haven't really been pulling trees up in terms of Gallagher Premiership unexpectedly this season, but I still think this is a side who do love Europe, and they're going to be building momentum here. I think it's all to do with the pack. They have a very talented half-back line. They do have Henry Slade at 13. They have threats throughout the pitch. And I think, to be perfectly honest, for Munster, how do we want to play this? I mean, do we want Exeter? If it's a pack battle, then I think we're a little bit in trouble. So do Munster change it up a little bit in terms of personnel changes, particularly at 10, 15? Are you brave enough maybe to put Healy and Carberry on the same side? That's kind of the conundrum that I think Johan van Graan and the management is having to deal with here. I think pack-wise, we're going to have our moments of crises, but I think there has to be a response, Liam, after that 34-19 loss against Leinster. There has to be. If not, then season spirals out of control. Head coach could just leave at that stage. So I think Exeter will win, but I think it may be 5 points. I think it could be still manageable going into Thomond Park on the Easter weekend, because otherwise I think, as I said, a few home truths are being told last weekend. I think, unfortunately, maybe a few obituary notices might be kind of there for certain players if a similar result happens this weekend. So I think pressure's on the players. I think players will deliver a performance better than last weekend, but it won't be good enough to win, I don't think, against Exeter. Stratford say Racing 92, the Parisian Derby.
Yeah, well, it's a good contest there. I suppose Stad haven't really always delivered in Europe, really, have they? For all the amazing talent they've had down through the years. Racing, certainly if you're ever talking about an away leg advantage in the second leg, Racing would be kind of that you'd be thinking about. I would fancy Stad to win the first leg. I'd give it something like plus 5 points. I think, home advantage will just about swing it for him in this one.
Yeah, I think the form book goes out the window a little bit here, particularly in this one. Just two Parisian sides. Stratford say really looking to get back to the glory days. I remember back in the 90s, Dominguez, Stratford say the talent they had. They really haven't kicked on, there's been ownership kind of looking to create an identity in that football club hasn't really happened. Racing 92 are the kind of, they are the team of Paris. But again, I think Stade Francais probably will win. But I think, all depends on Racing 92's mentality on this one. They're fully capable of beating Stade, but again, Racing 92, it's how expansive they want to be in this match. If they become all out expansive, they may give Stade Francais opportunities to attack. I think Stade by 3, but I think ultimately Racing 92 will probably win the 2 legs there. But I think that probably for me is the most fascinating of the fixtures, because I think if there is going to be a big shock here, I think it might be Stade Francais pulling the upset over Racing 92, and that's purely to do with local rivalry more so than squads here. Montpellier, my favourite team against Harlequins here, Liam, given how Montpellier went in the pool stages. Harlequins kind of going pretty well in the Gallagher Premiership and European Rugby. Who do you fancy?
Yeah, and well, Harlequins really could say, I know Ulster were, but you could also say certainly Harlequins were also one of the 4 teams in the group stages. If I was tipping an away win, actually, funny enough, I think yes, I would be going with Quins this weekend, actually. So I'm going to be tipping them, plus 7 points. Harlequins to win.
Yeah, I think for me an awful lot will depend on this Montpellier side. They've been very hot and cold in terms of this competition, but I think being a home tie, they may just throw on their first team and really test Quins out. I think for me, this Montpellier side, particularly their pack, is still very formidable. If they have the first pack out, I think Harlequins could be in a spot of bother here. Maybe a 5-7 point win to Montpellier. I think for me, apart from Connacht, I think everyone else has been home win so far. I think it's going to go in that same vein. I think Montpellier, if they do take this game seriously, I think the stoop, Montpellier may change it up a bit and put French players in to maybe freshen things up a bit. But I think for me, Montpellier maybe by 3 to 5 points. And then finally, Clermont-Auvergne entertaining Leicester Tigers in the Mission. Who are we thinking here, Lee?
Well, you have to say the Stade Michelin, it's not quite the fortress of old, is it? Really, it has to be said. So, Tigers have a big chance. They have such a pack up front. They really do. This is probably for me one of the hardest games to call. Actually, funny enough, I would probably have to plump for Clermont, and Damien Penaud will do something spectacular to make the difference. So I go +6 for Clermont.
Yeah. To me, I think this is probably the other fascinating tie of the weekend. I think others are kind of a little bit more conclusive. I think this one all depends on Clermont. Seen them against Sale Sharks in the Champions Cup pool stages, and particularly at home, I thought they were quite fortunate to probably win. I mean, if they have that level of performance, I think Leicester Tigers win all day long. But I think this could be a pretty expansive game. Now, belying the fact that there's Leicester Tigers here in Clermont, 2 meaty packs. But I think it's the last game of the weekend, and I think players will be eager to impress. So I think it's a high-scoring game. I think maybe Clermont by 2 to 3 points. But again, I would fancy Leicester overall in the 2 legs to get through. But I think these are fascinating watches here, Liam. I mean, the fact that this is the 2-legged affair, I mean, the mission this weekend for any team in the last 16 is keep in touch. That 7 points is your magic number. If you're losing, lose within 7. Otherwise, you're under massive heaps of pressure in the second leg. And if it's over 13, 14, I think you can probably forget about it, really, unless there's an absolute catastrophic collapse from your opponent, which is not likely because these sides coming in, the away sides are next week are going to be the lower seeds. They've no pressure on them. It's all on the higher seeds then to literally get these results. So I think it's all poised for some fascinating games here, Liam. And we'll probably talk about that more at length next weekend, see what the standout performances are. It's been a lengthy one here, Liam, but I think we had plenty to get through, particularly on Munster Rugby, the state of Munster Rugby organisation, the URC, the contract news, the retirement of Dan Leavy, and also our European Champions Cup preview. Thank you, Liam, in terms of your inside contributions, and hope to see you next weekend.
Yeah, always good, man.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.